The plane you see now is preparing for an emergency landing. Shortly after takeoff, the seemingly normal aircraft had its nose landing gear get stuck in the compartment, unable to deploy. Passengers have gathered at the rear of the plane, bracing for impact. The runway at Shanghai Hongqiao Airport has been covered with firefighting foam. For the experienced pilots in the cockpit, this was their first time encountering such a difficult situation. Will this plane be able to land safely without its nose landing gear? Hello everyone, I'm Test. Today, I'm going to tell you about the China Eastern Airlines Flight 586 emergency landing. On September 10, 1998, after several consecutive days of hot weather, Shanghai was experiencing light rain. That evening, 120 passengers were preparing to board China Eastern Airlines Flight 586 from Shanghai to Beijing. The flight, which had arrived in Shanghai from Los Angeles, was assigned a different aircraft, a McDonnell Douglas MD-11, registration number B29173. 53-year-old Captain Ni Jiexiang, after completing his walk-around inspection, returned to the cockpit. He began pre-flight preparations. This instructor, with over 30 years of flying experience, would lead the crew. First Officer Yan Baodi, Flight Engineer Zhao Yongliang, and co-pilot Arc Observer Lu Gay on this flight mission. This McDonnell Douglas MD-11 was developed and manufactured by the McDonnell Douglas Corporation. It was based on the DC-10, with an extended fuselage and wingspan and equipped with new engines. It also featured an advanced glass cockpit. This distinctive Triget aircraft was not a bestseller at the time. However, as China Eastern Airlines' main long-haul aircraft in the 1990s, it witnessed the rapid development of China's civil aviation. The aircraft taxied to runway 18 at Hongqiao Airport. After the crew completed the pre-takeoff checklist, they received takeoff clearance from the controller. China Eastern 586, wind 110 at 5 meters per second. Runway 18 cleared for takeoff. Runway 18 cleared for takeoff. China Eastern 586. After receiving takeoff clearance, the captain slowly advanced the thrust levers. The three Pratt & Whitney 4000 engines began to propel the nearly 180-ton aircraft down the runway. Rotate. At 1938, Flight 586 took off from Hongqiao Airport. Positive rate. Gear up. Just as the crew retracted the landing gear, they noticed something unusual. The indicators for the main landing gear showed they were up and locked, but the nose gear indicator light was red. This meant the nose landing gear was not properly locked in the retracted position. After climbing to an initial altitude of 900 meters, the plane leveled off. The crew checked the instruments and confirmed on the status page that the nose landing gear was not correctly retracted. At first, the crew suspected a faulty indicator light. They decided to cycle the gear, thinking it might resolve the issue. So they lowered the landing gear. This time, when the gear was down, all 4 green lights indicated it was down and locked. But when they retracted the gear again, the nose gear indicator light turned red once more. Having confirmed a malfunction, the first officer requested a return to Hongqiao Airport. After receiving clearance to return, the crew cycled the landing gear one more time. The nose gear indicator remained red. The experienced Captain Ni had never encountered this situation before. They began following the emergency checklist, attempting to deploy the gear using the alternate extension system. After performing the procedure, the main landing gears deployed normally, but the nose gear remained stuck. From the cockpit, the pilots could only rely on their instruments to judge the landing gear status. So, the captain decided to perform a low pass so ground personnel could visually inspect the gear. For safety, the aircraft's first pass was over the runway at an altitude of 300 meters. But by then it was dark, and ground crews couldn't see the landing gear's condition. After 2 unsuccessful attempts, the crew asked ground personnel to move to the runway threshold to get a better view. This time, the captain flew the plane down to an altitude of just 30 meters above the ground. Finally, the ground personnel were able to see the aircraft clearly. They confirmed the nose gear was not down. Upon learning of the emergency aboard Flight 586, the city of Shanghai dispatched 350 armed police, 59 fire trucks, and 20 ambulances to the airport for the rescue effort. Hongqiao Airport suspended all arrivals and departures. The aircraft was instructed to enter a holding pattern. The immediate priority was to try and get the landing gear down while airborne. Otherwise, upon landing, the aircraft would lose its primary means of support and directional control on the runway. Sparks from the friction between the fuselage and the runway could easily ignite the aircraft. For both the pilots and the ground crews, this was the first time they had ever faced such a dangerous emergency. After consulting the flight manual, the crew tried shutting off hydraulic systems 1 and 3, which control the landing gear, to attempt a gravity drop. However, the nose gear still did not respond. After consulting with the ground, Captain Ni decided to try high G maneuvers, hoping the G-forces would shake the landing gear loose. They tried a rapid climb, a side slip, and a steep bank turn, but the nose gear remained stuck in the wheel well. Since they couldn't get the nose gear down while in the air, the crew began to consider a touch-and-go landing. The idea was to use a hard landing to shock the nose gear out. This maneuver required them to control the G-force on touchdown to avoid structural damage, while still ensuring a firm enough impact. This wasn't something they had ever practiced in the simulator, let alone something they'd have to perform in a real emergency. The crew attempted 2 touch-and-go landings, but unfortunately, this method also failed. The plane had been circling for over an hour, both in the air and on the ground. They had tried every possible solution. Faced with this dilemma, the crew sent flight engineer Zhao Yongliang, who knew the aircraft's structure well, on a risky mission to the landing gear bay. He would attempt to lower the gear manually. Using a nylon rope meant for emergency evacuations, he secured himself and opened the landing gear inspection hatch located in the avionics bay. Through the opening, he could see that the landing gear was stuck in a near retracted position. The gear doors were open about 30 centimeters. Risking being sucked out by the pressure differential, flight engineer Zhao Yongliang used the aircraft's emergency axe to strike the gear assembly forcefully. But the landing gear wouldn't budge. The crew had exhausted every possible option in the air. With fuel running low, and after consulting with the ground, their only choice was an emergency gear-up landing. The fire trucks that had been on standby at Hongqiao Airport sprayed a 500-meter-long and 30-meter-wide layer of foam on the runway. This foam would help reduce sparks from the friction between the fuselage and the runway, lowering the risk of fire. At 22:58, the aircraft had 2.5 tons of fuel remaining. Captain Ni Jiaxiang lined the aircraft up with the ILS signal for runway 18 at Hongqiao Airport. First Officer Yan Baodi worked with the captain, managing the throttles. In the cabin, the 120 passengers were all moved to the rear of the aircraft to shift the plane's center of gravity aft. For this type of emergency landing, the captain not only had to land the plane normally, but also perfectly time the lowering of the nose. He had to bring the nose down as accurately and gently as possible onto the foamed section of the runway. For any pilot, this was an immense challenge. At 23:07, to the sound of the cabin crew's brace for impact calls, Captain Ni Jiaxiang brought the aircraft, with its nose gear still retracted, down for a precise landing on runway 18. After the main wheels touched down, The captain immediately deployed the reverse thrusters and pulled back on the yoke to hold the nose up. After the aircraft had slowed sufficiently, he carefully eased the control column forward, gently lowering the aircraft's nose onto the runway. The instant the nose touched down, the flight engineer pulled the engine fire handles, cutting off fuel supply to the engines. This ensured that any sparks from the friction would not ignite fuel if they entered the engines. The aircraft skidded for another 380 meters before coming to a stop on the runway. As soon as the plane stopped, dozens of waiting fire trucks moved in and began spraying the aircraft with foam to prevent any fire from breaking out. The crew initiated an emergency evacuation. During the evacuation, the number 3 slide on the left side was punctured by debris, causing it to deflate. 6 passengers and 3 crew members sustained minor injuries. The other 128 people evacuated safely. After being doused in firefighting foam, the aircraft did not catch fire, avoiding serious secondary damage. Thanks to the close cooperation between the aircrew and ground teams, Flight 586 successfully completed its emergency landing. The question that followed was, why did this aircraft's front landing gear fail to deploy? The investigation revealed that when the nose gear was first retracted after takeoff, a 15 cm long bolt, part number ACG7161501, had sheared off and fallen from the aircraft. It was this small bolt that caused the nose gear's uplock linkage to get stuck in the near retracted position. As a result, the nose gear extension and retraction mechanism failed completely. This is why the crew, whether using the normal hydraulic system or the alternate extension system, was unable to lower the nose gear. The Civil Aviation Authority organized a large search party, even mobilizing local residents near the airport, to look for this small bolt. Unfortunately, it was never found. To determine why the bolt failed, investigators took the sister aircraft of the incident plane, B-2174, and removed the corresponding bolt for metallurgical analysis. The results showed that the sulfide inclusions in this bolt exceeded the quality standards for similar aerospace-grade structural steel in China. Therefore, it was concluded that the bolt that failed and fell off most likely had a metallurgical quality defect. As the first successful emergency landing of a commercial airliner in China, the crew members and ground personnel worked together closely and effectively, minimizing the damage from this incident. It was these unsung, hard-working, and brave individuals who created the miracle of a safe landing. The aircraft involved in the incident was successfully repaired and converted into a freighter 2 years later, delivered to China Cargo Airlines for service. On February 27, 2005, Captain Ni Jiaxiang piloted an MD-11 freighter safely into Shanghai Pudong Airport. This hero captain, with 44 years of flying experience, bade farewell to the blue sky to which he had dedicated his life.